for a viable business for Ghana recently, a very lucrative one as that, and also a safe investment with all the issues in the finance sector. Everyone is investing in real estate and then putting their properties up for rent through the Airbnb system. But many of us are into this business without a clear and full understanding of the regulatory requirements, without the clear and full understanding of registration requirement, without a clear and full understanding of conditions and qualifications or standards that needs to be put in place in running this business in Ghana. As a law firm, we've had so many issues or so many clients who have had complaints, either as a consumer and also as a business owner or investor in the industry. We love you, we love your business, and we want you to do very good business, which is compliant and also satisfies or meets the needs of your consumers. So we have here Mr. Akwesi Agyemang. Mr. Akwesi Agyemang is the CEO of the Ghana Tourism Authority. The Ghana Tourism Authority is the regulatory department or the regulator for Airbnb business in Ghana, since they fall into accommodation services. Mr. Akwesi, of course, has over 15 years experience in this industry, in addition to what he does at the Ghana Tourism Authority. He's been in the business, he's been in a media space. He's also been in project management. He understands PR, media, banking, relationships. He's a businessman, properly so-called. So he understands all the issues which pertain to Airbnb business and the right person to speak to this topic. Mr. Agyemang, you're welcome to our session today, and we are all ready to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
All right. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I wish I had a full understanding of the subject area to be able to address all the issues. But for me, it's still a learning process for me and for all of us at the Tourism Authority. And so we are happy that you've invited us to share our knowledge. But more importantly, we are also here to learn on how we can work together with investors, with the Airbnb community, to ensure that our regulatory mandate is not usurped, and that we are able to navigate all the regulatory challenges purposefully for everybody, to the benefit of the community, to the benefit of Ghana, to the benefit of the industry as a whole. We all know that the Airbnb phenomenon has disrupted the traditional accommodation landscape globally. And so this is not just a Ghana phenomenon. Globally, countries and destinations have been going through some regulatory challenges when it comes to Airbnb. How can we properly mitigate these challenges and make sure that it's a win-win for all of us? That for us is one thing that we've been working on. Like you rightly said, the Ghana Tourism Authority was established by the Tourism Act of 2011, Act 817, and we serve as a regulatory body for tourism in Ghana. And so our functions include marketing, product development, and the rest. But when it comes to specific regulations, we provide oversight on all tourism-related activities, and that includes promoting sustainable tourism development and ensuring compliance with standards and guidelines. And that is really critical, that we make sure that everybody who is within the landscape, within the industry, is doing something related to tourism, goes through proper standards and guidelines. And so we have several legislative instruments and regulations that govern each activity. For accommodation, we have the LI 2239 that governs all the accommodation establishments. And these include hotels, guest houses, service apartments, uh, all kinds of accommodation facilities. And the LI specifies licensing requirements, the safety standards, and operational guidelines that you have to go through to be able to operate a facility. And that is to ensure quality and safety for guests and make sure that people who are visiting facilities of accommodation are safe, they derive the maximum quality service, and are able to go back feeling that they've been provided some value for their money. And so the regulations aim to strike a balance between what the consumers and the customers expect, while also fostering a vibrant tourism industry. And so we work with all the various stakeholders, the Ghana Tourism Federation, the Hotels Association, Progressive Hotels Association, all to make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to delivering on the mandate that we have. Specific to Airbnb, we have been leading collaborative efforts with the Airbnb team to ensure that there is common ground guidance to protect hosts and guests and also foster a secure and regulated environment. And this is not just specific to Ghana. I believe that regulating peer-to-peer accommodation platforms like Airbnb have proven to be a bit challenging because they have a global reach. By the click of a button, you are sitting somewhere, whether it's in Kumasi or in Koko, Accra, or Nairobi or Johannesburg, wherever that you can uh, upload your facility on a platform that has a global reach without really going through local legislative frameworks. And that has become a challenge for most destinations. And so countries worldwide, cities have tried to find ways that they can apply some safety valves to ease the pressures caused by the Airbnb phenomenon. I mean, I think all of us are agreeable when it comes to the regulators globally that we need Airbnbs, we need a lot of accommodation facilities. And so the issue has nothing to do with the investment itself. Really, it's more to do with how do we ensure that there are safety valves for everybody, that the regulations that our individual countries have put in place are not disrespected, so to speak. And so we can cite examples of countries and cities who have had to find ways to regulate the Airbnb phenomenon. And Amsterdam, New York, Miami, all these countries have been battling the Airbnb phenomenon to try and find common ground. I mean, you can look at a few case studies. For example, in Kenya, you have uh, Airbnbs falling under the homestays, uh, service apartment and flats establishments. And these are regulated by the Tourism Regulatory Authority of Kenya. And so every facility must be registered under the Tourism Fund regulations. And so licensing is mandatory for all tourism activities in Kenya. And this includes Airbnb listings. And so, but there still have been challenges because it's always very difficult to uh, more or less, you're dealing with a technological platform, and sometimes you will not be able to have the oversight that you have because you don't control the platform. But I must say, since we engaged with Airbnb since 2019, we've seen some healthy collaboration and healthy understanding on how we can work within our regulatory mandate and the regulations that we have to make sure it's a win-win for everybody. Sometimes issues of insecurity have raised concerns with destinations. South Africa is one of them where there have been instances where there's been a call on Airbnb to do more. I mean, Airbnb community is generating a lot of billions of rands for the economy. So SA Tourism and the Grading Council and everybody involved are welcoming Airbnbs, but also asking that they look at the regulatory approaches to them. There's a national legislation, there's a municipal bylaws that have to be respected, and then there's also what we call the contract law. How do we make sure that the contract between host and guest are respected, and who is the arbiter when it comes to that. So if somebody goes into a facility and does not get a service, will Airbnb be able to be the arbiter there, or they will have to resort to the law courts of the country? In which case, you are moving from a technology platform into the realm of the country laws. And in that case, we need to make sure that we have understood these nuances very well. Always trying to have the delicate balance between promoting tourism and at the same time ensuring safety and compliance for guests and also for hosts. Ireland, for example, in 2019, required properties to obtain permissions to be legally advertised as Airbnb. So although the enforcement is always patchy, because like I indicated, you are dealing with technology which is moving at a rate where most countries are struggling to catch up. It's very important that everybody who is involved in the chain, i.e. the regulator, the Airbnb platform, and the host and even guests all understand that you need permissions in some cases, and that we all have to make sure that the enforcement works. I can cite examples of other European countries, Amsterdam, like I mentioned earlier, London, all trying to implement regulations to limit the abuse, quote unquote, of Airbnb. When I say abuse here, I'm not saying it in a derogatory manner to the Airbnb platform, but to say that people are aware that there are laws. I mean, you need to go by the accommodation regulations of every country. But because there's a platform that you go and you are not required to, sometimes in cases, not required to go through the local regulations, people just decide that, okay, I will upload my facility because the technology allows that. And so that is what we have been doing with Airbnb to make sure that there's a balancing act between the platform and also local laws. So we know that Airbnb offers unique, authentic experiences for travelers and also revenue for hosts, which helps boost local economies. And so I know a lot of people that will tell me, oh, I have, and I have you licensed? And they say, oh, I tell them, go platform, a responsible hosting page. And those are things that you can learn from. And then how do we also have the regulatory requirements, protecting residents, ensuring safety, and preventing abuse? I mean, there have been instances where we've been called upon by the Ghana police to send a report on facilities that have been, people who have been either duped at facilities that are listed on Airbnb platforms. There have been a few instances where cases even travel the court system, and then we've been called upon to come and answer why the facility was operating without a license. And we tell them it's an Airbnb listing, which we are grappling with, struggling on how we can find a common ground to regulate. So we've been engaging Airbnb, like I indicated, and currently we have listed the regulatory requirements on the responsible hosting page, which every Airbnb facility goes through before you list. You go there and it's boldly written that you have to go to the Ghana Tourism Authority to get a license before you list. What we have done with Airbnb is to try and make it mandatory. And so currently it looks like a voluntary ask, but our regulation, if you are talking about accommodation, there are so many requirements. You need EPA, you need a police report, you need fire service, you need business operating permits and all that. Given the peculiarity and the unique nature of Airbnb, we've come to some reasonable agreement that going forward, we are going to administratively relax some of these requirements and rely on the due diligence that Airbnb does, so that there is a way to check the listings, and then we then come in on the back of that. And I think in the next few weeks, we are hopeful that we will finish that engagement, and that based on our learnings from the global experiences, countries like Kenya, South Africa, Ireland, and a few examples that I mentioned, we are very sure that Ghana will be on the right path and that we will be able to navigate Airbnb's growth. But we want to also have a very effective regulation, something that will not become a bottleneck for operators. And so that is why we've taken our time to go through this level of engagement, several meetings with Airbnb, with their South African office, and also with some of their key experts to really make sure that the regulation that will be put in place will help the industry as a whole, will harness the economic benefits of Airbnb to both host guests, local economies, and also safeguard the tourism industry. So by and large, that is what we are doing, trying to find the delicate balance, as we say, to make sure that, yes, the regulation is in place, but it inures to the benefit of everybody within the value chain. I was told that it's going to be very interactive, so I will end here and then focus on answering all the questions that your guests have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it all. The mechanisms which are being put in place is spoken about some of the requirements. In fact, someone just sent a question. So just as we put in the chat box, if you have a question, kindly put up your hand now, or you can text to us on the WhatsApp page or on the email address we've given as well, and your questions will be addressed. I've received 3 questions, but I think in his presentation, he already addressed some, but if there's no hand up, I will ask them all the same. So the first question was, how do we know if a facility is registered with the authority? Hello, sir. I think it's network. Hello, Mr. Jaman. Okay, so please bring on or text your questions, and then once he comes back online, we can ask him about it, about the question. Okay, thank you.
All right, can I go ahead?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, yes, sir. Hello, sir. He back. Okay. Okay. Um, okay. I'm unable to reach him either. Well, that is network for you. This is a technical hitch. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I think I would take your questions and probably text it to him when he comes back online. And once we get the response, we'll share with you. Someone also asked, what are the registration requirements for the license? I think that yes, I've seen another question. It was the same as what is the procedure? Okay, yeah, that's a different one. What is the procedure for registration? I recall in that presentation, he said now you will need to get EPA permits, you will need to get a fire service certificate or permit as well. You need to get your business operating permit. Hi, this is from Gwen from Airbnb. I'm the head of policy. I can also speak to some point. Awesome, Gwen. Thank you so much. Please unmute and share and speak to us about the experience. This is beautiful.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to join your webinar. Apologies, but I'm not in a place where I can open my video, but I just thought that, especially since Mr. Ajuman is still maybe reconnecting, that I could share some things that might be beneficial from in terms of your discussion. And the one area in terms of, I think, the first question that was asked, it might be useful to know that at present, if you go onto the Airbnb platform, you would not be able to tell necessarily which listing is registered or not registered. And I think an important conversation, especially from a legal point of view here, is understanding that there are different. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So it's just to note that important discussion around the difference between host obligations and platform obligations. So because Airbnb is a platform, even if there are laws in Ghana that require property owners or people who have a listing on Airbnb to be registered and to be licensed, that obligation falls on the host. Should it be the case that the authorities want Airbnb to enforce this, or not just Airbnb, but other platforms, booking.com, whatever else, if there is a desire that the platforms themselves must enforce the registration and licensing, in other words, the platforms must make sure that they only allow listings that are in fact registered. And in some cases, they might require that platforms remove listings which are not registered. That needs to be a separate provision in the law. There has to be a specific platform obligation. So in addition to whatever obligations there are for property owners to register and be licensed, there should also then be a platform obligation in the law for what the obligations on platforms must be. And I think that's just an important thing to bear in mind when thinking about what is the role of platforms in enforcing some of these rules, and which is sometimes forgotten because I think the role between host and platform is often confused or conflated with each other, but they are not the same. They have separate legal responsibilities and obligations.
That's a good one, which means if you are interested, you're an investor, you're in the business, your responsibility is to find out from the regulators within your country what the requirements are and comply. Don't rely solely on the information on the platform because they are two distinct regimes. In summary, Gwen, if I got it right.
Yes, precisely. I mean, Mr. Jimin spoke earlier about the responsible hosting page that we have. So we certainly do our best to be a good partner to authorities and make sure that we raise awareness of what are the compliance or what are the legal obligations for property owners, investors, etc. But it is still incumbent on the owner themselves to make sure that they are fully compliant. But I think the important thing from the authorities' point of view is that if they wish for the platform to do something specifically beyond raising awareness, this needs to be an obligation created in the law, which at present does not exist in Ghana. At present, there are registration and licensing requirements, but that is for the actual owner of the accommodation. Airbnb, of course, as everyone knows, does not own any of the properties on the platform. So when it comes to registration and licensing, that is an obligation that falls on the host. Yeah. So any additional obligations for platforms specifically would need to be legislated for.
Very helpful there. Mr. Akwesi is still trying to join. I've seen screenshots of the error connecting from his side, so I've resent him the link. In the meantime, I think we'll ask a question. Is there a complaint mechanism, for instance, with Airbnb directly, either on your platform or maybe contact that somebody may call in the event that they didn't have a very good experience using any of the registered facilities? When?
Absolutely. There's something called our 24-hour helpline. So you should be able to contact Airbnb if the listing, I mean, of course, challenges can arise at any point throughout the customer journey. So you may be contacting because the booking you've made, perhaps the host is no longer responsive, and that is pre-check-in. Or maybe during check-in, you arrive and actually find the listing does not exist. Or it could even be after check-in where you've checked in, but then you discover something in the listing that isn't as it's supposed to be. Of course, we'd always encourage that the first port of call should be communicating with the host, but where that negotiation or discussion is not bearing fruit or is not being successful, then of course you can reach out to Airbnb for support. And there is a 24-hour helpline for that. There is also something we've mentioned called air cover, which is insurance for both the guest and the host side. So there's air cover for guests and there's air cover for hosts. And for hosts, it protects against sort of like third-party liability, helping with guest identity verification and all the kind of insurance support that hosts might need. And on the guest side, it also supports, if you find that your listing is not as you required, then there's insurance to ensure that Airbnb would help you find an alternative listing that is either at the same price point as the one you had booked, or you can get a refund, etc. So, but information around air cover as well is provided on the website.
That's nice. Thank you. I've seen a question. Someone is asking, can you list the items that you will need for registration? I don't know whether it's in relation to the permits, license, or in relation to the Airbnb platform. But since we have you, Gwen, if you would like to tell us the requirements for registering on your platform, I think it would be helpful.
Thanks. It's a fairly simple registration. I can actually put the link. I'll get the link now and I'll put it in the chat for what the registration requirements are.
Beautiful. Okay, so our second question, it was for the license, but I will redirect it to Gwen. Oh, Mr. Kwesi is back online. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm back. Okay, so the first
Welcome.
question has been answered, right?
Not in terms of the license, I will still ask you all the same. We got the response from Gwen. Gwen is the head of policy from Airbnb, which we are very fortunate to have joined this webinar. And she shared with us how she responded to the first question on how you would know whether a facility is registered on their platform. The person who sent the question wanted to know how you would know the facility has a license from the Ghana Tourism Authority. So if you could address that as well.
Like I indicated, we issue licenses with numbers. And so if you go to a licensed tourism facility, ordinarily you will see the certificate displayed. And so that is a very easy and straightforward one. Everybody has a unique ID number on it. It is barcoded. And so when our officers go there, you can scan and get the details. And so that will have the name of the facility, when the license was issued and when it expires. And so that is how you will identify license facility. But like I indicated in my presentation, with Airbnbs and its unique nature, I mean, when I talk about license facility, uh, typically you will have a budget hotel, a guest house, sometimes with 10 rooms and above, 5 rooms and above, and all that. But where you have, for example, facilities where there is a host, maybe one room, somebody's apartment, and all that, we've realized that there has to be some review of the regulatory environment to cater for said short-term rentals. And so that is why we've been working with Airbnb and we've been working with people like Gwen on it to make sure that at least we will have some regulations specific to what we call the Airbnbs. But it's not just Airbnb, there are so many other platforms that people list their facilities on. But we are using Airbnb advisedly because they are the ones that we are working with.
Very well. Thank
So
you.
we've given ourselves new airlines specific to short-term rentals to the category of Airbnbs. But in the interim, we've come with some understanding that a lot of the things that you may require, I mean, like a budget hotel may require, a guest house may require, a hotel may require, may not be applicable to Airbnb. So that is why I said we will rely on the due diligence that Airbnb does, but we will grant provisional licenses to operators so that they don't fall foul of the law and they can go ahead with their business. That within the time frame that we've set, we'll all be able to work with Parliament to come up with this new legislative instrument.
That's actually very happy to hear, ladies and gentlemen. So even though the requirements may be cumbersome at the moment, the authority will give you a provisional license once you've satisfied the due diligence requirements by Airbnb in the meantime until the LI or the law is effectively in place. I think it's a good step. We are happy about that. Gwen, if you wouldn't mind, could you let us understand or share with us the requirements for your DD? What they need to satisfy to qualify for registration?
Hi, so I was just sharing some of the you mean just to set up if you had a property and you wanted to be able to run it on Airbnb, it's a relatively simple process. I put in the link there in the chat, but the initial requirements that are required are just like your basic personal details, some details about the listing itself, the type of listing that it is, where it will be located, etc. We are in the process of rolling out complete guest, host, and listing verification. So host and listing verification. Host verification obviously is just to ensure that you as a host actually exist and that when guests book, they can be certain that they are booking with a real life individual. So there's an identity verification process that is being upgraded and rolled out globally, as well as a listing verification. So beyond, I mean, you as a person may exist, you may be able to supply your government ID numbers and documentation, etc. But the listing you have placed on Airbnb may be fraudulent or may be totally made up. So there's obviously also a global process underway to tighten up listing verification. I can't off the cuff speak to where that's at for Ghana, but I know it is something that's intended to be rolled out globally. And we are at over 90% of rollouts for both host and listing verification globally. So if it's the case that it has not reached Ghana, it will be as soon as we roll this out globally.
Very well. I think we've lost Mr. German again. I was going to ask him about the requirements. No, he's already answered that. Somebody wanted to know the cost and how long the permits is for. Is it a day or a year, 2 years, 5 years? But we've lost him again. Okay, so Gwen, maybe you would tell us the duration for listing or maybe conditions for delisting. What is there any oversight or supervision by Airbnb, where you can delist a facility or property if they are not complying with some requirements after a period? Do you monitor in any way, and under what circumstance will the property be delisted?
I mean, we have extensive trust and safety tools on the platform and, take safety and security very seriously. So aside from any legal requirements, there are obviously a number of ways in which host accounts could be reviewed, and potentially, depending on the severity or quantity of incidents, it may end up in the host being removed from the platform. So that could be as a result of sustained sort of poor guest reviews or guest complaints. As I say, depending on the severity of the complaint, you may be removed after just one complaint, of course, depending on what the complaint is, or a succession of complaints that eventually lead to your account being suspended. But on the legal side, in terms of delisting listings which are not properly registered, that goes back to the earlier point I was making around platform obligations, which is that at present in Ghana, we don't feel we have a legal mandate to remove listings that are not compliant with the law, because there is no specific platform mandate for us to do so. But if that was a responsibility or obligation that authorities wanted to confer to Airbnb, in other words, because on one hand, it should be the authorities themselves who make the determination that this platform does not meet the registration requirements, and for them to communicate with those operators that they should not continue with their operations. But saying that we must remove them passes on that responsibility onto the platform. And that's where we're saying that if that is what the end intention is, that it should be something that is maintained and determined by the platform, that there would need to be specific provisions in the law for a platform obligation, which currently is not the case in Ghana.
It's not the case, absolutely. Well, then we would look forward to it. It gives us an opportunity to advocate for the passage of this law at the earliest possible time. As a law firm, this year, for instance, we've had about 2 or 3 complaints, and they've revolved around crime in the facilities. We've had property owners complaining that customers or their tenants might have caused some criminal activities in the premises. We've also had the occupants complaining that they've had their items lost, and they want to file a suit against the property owners, all these terms. So it brings us back to tenancy arrangements or tenancy laws. Of course, we have the tenancy agreements, which they are permitted to sign or execute with the property owners. We know on your site you have is a house rules as well, which they are supposed to comply with. I don't know if in your practice or experience you've had a conflict between what the law requires, the rights for tenants, and also the house rules. Has there been any complaints so far? And what suggestion would you give in correcting these complaints or these anomalies?
Yes, not as far as I'm aware. I mean, for the listing, typically Airbnb is agnostic as to whether you are the owner or whether you are a tenant. The important thing is that you have the required permission to use that property, to derive an income or to use the property for this purpose. And so I usually tenant agreements can play that role, as well as proof of ownership or title deeds, etc. So, of course, in some depending on the country, certain buildings or may have their own rules that say that in this building, even if you own an apartment or something, you may not sublet or you may not list it on Airbnb. Of course, those rules supersede any rules on Airbnb. So if your apartment management does not allow you to sublet or does not allow you to list on Airbnb, even though Airbnb itself would be fine with that, it means you should follow the rules of your particular apartment etc. So yeah, there is I think what makes a space sometimes a bit challenging is there are all these different layers of rules. There can be rules at a national level, there can be rules at a local or municipal level, and there can even be rules within the specific building itself that you own or rent a property. So all of those must be examined in order to know whether you're on the right side of the law or not. But just very quickly, I can also say that where there are incidents, criminal or whatever nature, or particularly those that are potentially of a criminal nature, we do also work with law enforcement. I think sometimes also a matter of us, both sides, establishing that relationship, but certainly if a criminal incident is suspected or alleged to have taken place in an Airbnb, we do encourage law enforcement to bring that to our attention, where we can work with them to help make investigating easier, because law enforcement usually won't know, well, who was the host, when was the booking made, do you have proof that you made this booking? So that's the kind of information as a platform that we would have. And if law enforcement reaches out to us, we can definitely, support with any criminal investigation.
That's actually good to know. I think
So I would
may
encourage you in future if you do have, yeah. Sorry, I was saying, so in future, if you do have clients that, where you have these kind of incidents, please do reach out to us so that we can support where we can in those investigations.
I'm actually very happy to hear that. I guess we'll be working together a lot now because we get these complaints for which we're having this program. Mr. Ajim, I thought I saw you. Please, sir, are you back? I saw him. I think he's gone off again.
And I must
Very
say,
well.
apologies to Mr. Ajuman. I was not formally part of this program, but I'm just responding where I'm being asked to respond, but I don't want to hijack the session.
No, you've actually been very helpful because I think his network has been not stable. So having you has been an added advantage. I'm glad you joined today, and I think we get to know more about what Airbnb also requires. I think listeners would agree that it's been very helpful having you. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, there hasn't been any other questions, especially for Airbnb, since Mr. Jaman has not been able to join back. Oh, he's joined. Mr. Jaman. Yay!
Yeah.
Good. So we have just few questions. I'll ask you the two questions and maybe you can address that. Our time is almost up and then we can close. So the second question was, sorry, we can't hear you. Please, can you hear me, sir? Hello, sir.
Oh, I can hear you.
Yes, I think I can hear you. So I'll read the questions out. They want to know how much for the license and how
I
long
can
is the
hear
license.
you.
Okay, sir. How long is the license granted for and how
Hello?
much is it? Hello, sir. Hello,
I
sir.
can hear you.
Oh, we can barely hear you as well. Okay, no problem. I think I have the contacts of the person, the two people have sent these questions. So what I'll do is I'll email them to you, get the response, and then send it to them.
Okay.
Yes.
For Airbnb, the category, but I can hear you very well.
Unfortunately, we can barely hear you. I think he's gone off. The network is really bad, unfortunately, but it's definitely been a good time. Um, Gwen, I'll be happy to get your contact so we can reach you anytime necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, we have just 8 minutes to time. And I think that with the network issues and without further questions, we may want to end for today. It's been a lovely time, especially Gwen. We are really honored to have you. You've helped us resolve some of the issues and understand the process better. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the Airbnb business, we've heard it all, both from Airbnb and then now from the regulator on what you need to do to be compliant, what you need to do to run your business without infringing on local laws. For us who are the consumers or the target market, we've also learned that we need to check, immediately we get to the property, we must check if they have their certificate showing that they are duly registered. If they are duly registered, it gives us some comfort knowing that they are compliant. And so if there are further issues, you may have recourse. So please, let us all do our best in seeking compliance with the law in doing business in Ghana, and we are sure that you would have less hitches and a successful business for life. Thank you all for joining. Gwen, most grateful. Your contributions were very, very, very helpful. We are grateful that you joined and you shared with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you all very much, and see you next month. We have another interesting one to have another session next month. Oh, thank you, Mr. Agyeman. Says we understand the concerns and we are happy to work with you all to create a win-win situation. That is comforting coming from the regulator. So please let us go about our business knowing who to call, how to do business, and do it well. Thank you all once again and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Mr. Agyeman.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
Sorry, it's been a patchy morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.